if statements. If statements. If statements are one of the main building blocks of programming. They allow you to write lines or blocks of code that only get executed if a certain condition is met. And then the program just ignores it if it's not. In combination with Boolean operators, using this in conjunction with Boolean operators can lead to so many new doorways in programming. Boolean operators are essentially just mathematical operations that only have two possible results, true or false, also known as 1 and 0, similar to machine code that we learned earlier. Or on and off, like a light switch. So there are 4 sort of reserved Boolean operations that you need to know about in Python. There's equals, which is 2 equal signs, which is important because remember from the variables tutorial that 1 equal sign is an assignment operator. So you're saying what's on the right is being assigned to the... So in that you're saying the value on the right is being assigned to the memory space on the left. But with 2 equal signs, you're comparing what's on the left to the right. So if you had a equals 50, you're assigning the value of 50 to the variable called a. If you have a equals 50, you're asking Python to check the value of a and then compare that to the value 50. So if a does in fact equal 50, you'll get true. But if a equals any other number, you'll get false. And that's basically how Boolean operators work. There's also not equals, which does the opposite. That is shown by an exclamation mark and an equal sign. And then there's less than and more than, which are the arrows we all know and love from year 4 maths. And then we have some reserved words and, or, and not, which are used to combine these statements together. So a simple if statement works by using the keyword if, followed by the conditional criteria, followed by a colon. And then you have the line or block of code following that that's only executed if the criteria is fulfilled. This line of code is indented on another line, that way it shows what's contained in the loop and what isn't. The way you indent code in using idle is by just hitting the tab key. Also, if you hit enter after a colon, then idle should indent automatically for you. So yeah, if we start writing a program and we go a equals 10 and b equals 20, then we have the variables a and b equal 10 and 20, and we can have an if statement. If b is more than a, colon, then print b is bigger than a. And as we know, b is 20 and a is 10, so since 20 is more than 10, it will end up printing b is bigger than a. So if you change the value of b so it's lower than a, then nothing's going to happen to the program. But what if we want something to happen as well if a? So what if we want something to happen as well if b is lower than a? Well, that's where something called an if. Well, that's where something called an else statement comes in. Else statements. An else statement can be used following an if statement. An else statement can be used following an if statement. An else statement can be used following an if statement. This allows you to provide another section of code that's performed if the conditional criteria isn't met. this means we can provide an example. This means we can provide an output when b is smaller than a. So after the if b is more than a, if we then backspace so we're out of the loop, we can have else colon, and now we have another indent which is where we can enter the code that we want to be executed if the criteria does not. This is where we can enter the block of code that we want. This is where we can enter the code we want executed if b is less than a. So if we put print b is smaller than a, and then change b to 10 and a to 20, and hit enter, then we get b is smaller than a. So what if we change a and b to the same value? Well, if you change b and a to both to 10 and then run the program again, you see we still get b is smaller than a as a result. But b isn't smaller than a. But because we have that under an else statement, and we know that b isn't bigger than a because it's equal to it, we still get that output. Now we could just add another if statement like this, saying if b is equal to a, print b is equal to a, and then add another else statement like this. And that works, but it's considered bad practice really, because you have two if statements. Because the second if statement, if b is equal to a, we only actually want to know this if b isn't more than a. Because if we know b is already more than a, then b definitely isn't equal to a. So although it won't make any noticeable difference, it's still inefficient programming. Which means we shouldn't be wasting the power to just execute this anyway. So that's why we use something called else if statements. And an else if statement essentially allows you to give another set of criteria for the program to want to fulfill to output another block of code, and if that fails it can move on to another else if statement, or just an else statement. But none of these else or else if statements execute if an if or else if above it is fulfilled. So we're not wasting power by checking code we know is wrong. So if we just change the if b is equal to a to an elif b is equal to a, then if b is more than a, it's not going to bother checking whether it's also equal to a because it knows not to. We can also use many if and else if statements within the blocks of code that we can also use more if and else statements within the blocks of code we're running from the original if statements. This is called nesting, because you're nesting an if statement inside another if statement. So for example, we can add another if statement that detects if b is a negative number. Sorry, we can add another if statement to see if a is a negative number or a positive number. Like this. So if under the if b is more than a, if we add another if statement that says if b is less than or equal to 0, we now know that a is a negative number because a is less than b and b is 0 or less. So we can put a print statement saying a is a negative number, and then we can put else print a is a positive number. And now this doesn't actually quite work because, I mean, obviously, like, b could be 200 and a could be minus 50, and it would still say a is a positive number. This is more of just for an example that will work in what we already have, but this will come very handy down the line, trust me. You also can try combining loads of different Boolean statements into one if statement. For example, you could have if B is more than A and if B is less than or equal to 0, and then we could have print A is a negative number. This is where a lot of people start to get lost with programming, so if you want to watch this video again or read through the tutorial online, again, please do, because if you want to do more external research, please do it, because before you move on to the next lesson, you need a good grasp of how to use if-else statements. Alright, thanks for watching. Let me know if I got anything wrong or explained anything badly down below, and see you next time.